Today's meeting, and I would like to, actually, let me check with Mo. Mo, are we ready? Sorry, okay, we're ready. All right, we'll call to order today's meeting, and I would like to remind everyone to please turn off their phones or put them on vibrate. And we'll start out with a roll call, and I believe we are all present tonight, so we have a full quorum and everyone is present. Okay, we'll move on to item number 3, public comment on the agenda items. Do we have any?
Nobody's
public
signed
comment?
up.
Okay, nobody has signed up. All right. We'll carry on to item number 4, we'll review the minutes from the September 19th meeting.
I move to approve the meeting minutes.
Okay, we have a motion to approve.
A second.
Have a second. All those in favor of approving the meeting minutes from September 19th, 2022 meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passed. All in favor? Okay, we'll move on to item number 5. We have a staff presentation from the Director of Planning and Zoning, so we'll go ahead and turn the time over to Director Enbeck.
Yes, this is the Sawyer rezone application, Z43-22, and staff requests that the Planning and Zoning Commission hold a public hearing on a rezone application and provide a recommendation to the City Council, along with a statement of the Planning and Zoning Commission's reasons for the recommendation.
Okay, so that's the map.
Yes, that's the photos there.
Did we didn't have a parcel map in here, did we?
No, ma'am.
Okay. I was trying to figure out, and I should have looked it up.
There's, right across the street is the propane.
Mhm.
And then it's this top photo right here shows the Forest Service building.
Mhm.
And then there are empty fields, and this is across 8th from the property. So it's right there in the middle of fields and adjoining some residential.
North of this property, I noticed is vacant land. What is that currently zoned?
It's currently residential, but several people have come in and it's for sale, and they're thinking of rezoning it to commercial. They just haven't decided yet. So he has 2 parcels. I'll show you this photo. He has the store and then a house to the east, and he would like to rezone both of the parcels from conventional manufactured home district to general commercial district. The property is currently used commercially. He had a neighborhood meeting on September 1st at 4 p.m. His meeting notes were attached. The general plan states that all amendments shall be made in accordance with the general plan. It's public policy that this title shall not be amended unless it can be shown that the changed or changing conditions make the proposed amendment reasonably necessary to the promotion and purposes of this title. Goal number 1 promotes a compatible list of land uses throughout the Safford planning area. Staff is recommending that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend to City Council to rezone Graham County parcels 102-18-032A and number 102-18-032B from conventional manufactured home district to general commercial for the following 2 reasons. The property has been used commercially for several years. The zoning of the surrounding vacant land may change when it is developed. The location of the property is on a very busy street and is conducive to commercial uses, and the rezone is compatible with the area. And with that, I will answer any questions.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
with that, I'm going to recuse myself. I have a family member that owns that property,
Okay?
or across the street from it, should I say.
Okay, so Commissioner Ragland will be recusing himself from the action taken on this request. I don't remember what item it is.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, looking at the photos that we had there on the east side, you said on the east side?
Yes, that's his lot. So this house that is on the west side, he does not own. It's the one on the east
Okay,
side.
so, on the east side, I saw it, but it wasn't in the picture, so I didn't think it was one that we were talking about.
Yes.
But it is.
Yes, sir.
And it looks like they built a new shop behind it. And so we're talking about the gray building that they painted there.
I can pull it up on
Yeah.
the aerial for you.
That would be helpful.
And then, so we're talking about that building and then the electrical shop?
Mhm.
What about the vacant land, the field?
No. Just,
And by showing the field, I was wondering if that was.
no,
one of
that's
the-
the property that will be developed at some point.
And they may be interested in it.
Yes. You can ask questions while I'm logging in.
The other thing that if someone hasn't changed and, or it is changed to commercial, would that affect, the people that are nearby that, are residential? They don't have to, it wouldn't affect them one way or the other?
No, if this was undeveloped property and he didn't own one of the residences, I would probably have a different opinion. But this is already in existence, it's just my
So
internet's
the little
too.
home on the, on the west side will still stay
Yes.
residential?
Yes. And if at some point, I'm sorry, the internet is not being friendly with me today, but if at some point the zoning, if they wanted to sell that as commercial, it would be easier for that home to change it to. I'll just pull it up on Google for you.
So just to clarify, you are saying that the request tonight is only, will only change, if approved by the city council, the request tonight would only change zoning
Yes,
for the parcels that are requesting it?
yes,
Okay. And then, so, property taxes would not change for any surrounding parcels, it would only change for the applicant's parcels?
yes.
Okay.
And Mr. Doug Stewart is here for the applicant. The applicant is out of town currently, but he can also answer questions for you. And you can see how wide 8th Street is, and then directly across the street is the propane business.
8th Street,
Yes,
and not 12th Avenue.
correct.
We're concerned about 12th Avenue.
Yeah, so 8th Street. And 12th Avenue is right there, and that's all residential.
I've got a couple questions.
Mhm.
So we clarified that this change would only be for the parcels that the applicant is applying for, won't affect property taxes.
But it's approved.
What is the benefit to changing? Cause you said currently it's commercial manufactured home,
Yes.
so that does allow some commercial?
I misspoke, it's conventional.
Oh, conventional,
Yes,
sorry.
ma'am.
Okay, then that answers my question.
Yes,
So currently it's conventional manufactured home,
yes,
going to commercial.
yes.
So for commercial property, does the city of Safford have any requirements for ingress and egress for a business? I know ADOT on the highway has requirements for ingress and egress of a business. Does the city of Safford have that?
We do if this was a new construction project,
Okay,
but the way it is, it's been in existence so long that we will accept it the way it is. If it was new development, then it would have to develop to our current standards, but this is older than that.
so it's kind of like grandfathered
Yes.
in just because it's currently already existing?
Yes,
Okay,
And this is a request from the applicant, not a clean up the zoning
correct,
request from the city.
correct.
how
It
long
is.
has it been used as a business?
Mr. Stewart could answer that question for you.
Both parcels?
Industrial Electric's been there since like 1973.
Oh, wow.
somewhere around there.
And Industrial Electric, is the property that is furthest to the west?
Correct.
Okay, and the other the other parcel?
It has not been used as a business yet.
Okay,
And what they're planning on doing with that is making it an office for Foreign Angels Charity, for the Saffron Lions Club, a meeting room, and for Gila Valley Rotary Club.
okay,
Like, it's not gonna be used as industrial electric or anything like that.
okay.
And is the facility behind it part of that, or is that part of the industrial electric?
No, that's part of the house, and all that's in there is storage stuff.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
So now my question would be, is one parcel has been existing as commercial since 1970, so it would be grandfathered in, but the other parcel sounds like this is a new use, so maybe should it be looked at for ingress and egress?
That one, also the structure is standing, and if it is an office building, it would have enough parking for our current standards, and they could enter off of 12th and exit on 8th if they'd like. So that would be, for an office use, that would be okay. That would meet our current standards.
So then how do you ensure it's used just for office use and not other use?
That's what they would get their business license for.
But then could another owner later use it for something different with this zoning?
They would have to, if they change the use, they'd have to make sure that it conformed. And so, say, for instance, you couldn't have a really busy restaurant there because there's physically not enough space for the requirements. So it would set itself for what it could be used for with the space. So you couldn't have a big commercial use there, it's physically too small.
And that decision is made when they issue or request like a permit for a business license? Is
Yes.
that when you make that decision?
Yes.
Is with the business license?
Mhm. Yes, so the city would have to approve that. And then it would also, it is the general commercial, it's not the highway commercial, so the uses are lower in intensity also.
And has that been applied for by the applicant yet for the use?
No, the rezone is first, because if the rezone does not pass, then it's a moot point at that time. And there's the aerial off the county parcel map.
So you feel that, let me see if I get it right. Parcel A is the one that's adjacent to 12th Avenue.
Yes,
Parcel 102, 18032A. In your opinion, that property would have adequate space for ingress and egress for office space?
yes, ma'am.
So if somebody were to, submit a permit for something different, you'd have to reconsider?
Yes, it
Okay.
probably, anything much more intense than that, they simply don't have the room for parking and that kind of thing on their property.
Another question. I think they
Go ahead,
Now,
yeah, go ahead.
what kind of organization is the first one you mentioned that's gonna be there?
Foreign Angels?
Yeah, Foreign Angels.
That's Dennis's private charity thing that he
Again, well, what I was wondering, how many Foreign Angels is there?
How many members?
I mean, is it like a motorcycle group?
does. No, there's like 3 members.
Okay. It's not a great, big, large group that's gonna be meeting there, congregating, or,
No.
Yeah, because
Okay,
I'm wondering
that's
how
what
many
I-
parking spaces could you really fit there? Question, go ahead.
Me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, are you expanding the size of the building or the existing electrical shop or?
No.
Thank you.
Can you blow that up a little bit more? Like, will
Yes,
that
I
you?
can zoom on the
It's just
property.
kind of blurry.
Yeah,
That's good.
it'll,
That's good.
the
That's
close, right about there. Let me
No, go
move
back
it.
a little. Yeah, just kind of trying to see.
The concern is 12th Street.
Yeah.
Whether
I feel, okay, so the agenda looks a little bit different. We don't have, a section for discussion. Are we just doing that all at once with the staff presentation?
Sure.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions, any more questions of Director Embeck?
No.
So I feel, in my opinion, like parcel 102.18.032B has already been commercial since 1970, so it kind of makes sense, I think, for that to go commercial, just because it has been commercial, and it sounds like it could be grandfathered in as far as like any parking or ingress and egress. But I do struggle a little bit with 102.18.032B, only because of adequate parking. I'm not sure that there's, I wish I knew like how many spaces could actually fit in there.
We could measure that and have that information for the council when they decide.
I think that would be good, a good, point of information for the council to have. But I do like the, I mean, when you look across the street, everything's commercial, you go further west, everything's commercial, so 12th Avenue is kind of like the buffer for that next zone that is starting for commercial. I just think that there needs to be some more investigating on adequate parking.
Okay.
And ingress and egress, like, is that gonna be off of 8th Avenue, or is that gonna be off of 12th? Like, is it possible for it to be off of 8th Avenue? Could that be a requirement?
You could make that a requirement, yes.
Go ahead.
That was one of my thoughts. I don't know who owns the field.
To the north?
To the north and to the west. There's just that one field in there. And I thought if the individual that's doing this owned the field also, and it was too tight in that one area, there may even be a way that you could enter off of 8th and go
Yeah.
around to that building. I don't know.
I don't think they own it.
I don't know.
They don't.
I don't
Yeah.
know, okay. I didn't know if that was a part of it. Where it showed it on the map or on the information that we
Yeah.
received, I thought maybe that had something to do with
I
it.
think your audience thought they might get the chance to.
Yeah, nobody signed up for public comment, but is that when the
But anybody
neighborhood?
can,
I was just curious, because there wasn't a sign up.
There wasn't, okay, so is it okay if we go ahead and take public comment now, or do I need to open up
you're in your public hearing, so they,
so they can? Okay, so then anybody who would like to comment on item number 5, go ahead. Come on up, yeah, and please state your name.
I'm Travis Ragland. My concern with it mainly had to deal with what would happen later. And it sounds like some of that may have been addressed, but if it gets changed to commercial and then it gets sold, or if he decides that he wants to do something else, then, you know, what kind of problem are we gonna have? And I'm worried about the amount of parking there and how much traffic you're gonna end up with going down 12th to access the property, because if you're coming off 8th, I mean, they could fix it, but it's about a 2-foot drop from the road down into where the property is.
Also, we need to say, Travis and I own 1122 West 8th Street, which is just across 12th Avenue East. And so we own that property.
Yeah.
And so that's why we've got a dog in this fight.
Which would be the one on the far right of this.
Yes.
cur-
Yeah.
Currently, thank you.
And the other thing is, with regard to what he's planning on using it for, and again, it concerns me a little bit with the parking more. my understanding is that they were talking about like the Lions or the Rotary Club or somebody else going there. I don't know how many members they have. I don't know how much parking they're gonna require. I don't imagine they meet a whole lot. And like I said, ordinarily, I'm all for people's individual rights, and I definitely don't have anything against the Lions or the Rotary or any of those organizations. They do a lot of good work. But like I said, 12th isn't that big of a street, and I just don't know what they're gonna do with regard to parking and all of that. And then, like I said, really my biggest concern is what happens later. If it gets sold, or if he, you know, a year down the road decides that he wants to do something else with the property, and now that it's already commercial, you know, what do I end up with there? And how much traffic is that gonna have, and what kind of clientele is gonna be there? Those are my concerns, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thanks.
Can I make a question? Do we have a list of what is currently, general commercial use that we can
Yes.
quickly go over?
Yes, and also I would like to stress that this would be very limited due to the small size of the site. There's very little that they could do besides an office and meet the parking requirements.
So if somebody were to permit, you said like submit a permit for like a restaurant, you have parking requirements
Yeah, it
for that.
wouldn't, it's too small.
What about other things like retail or,
It's too small.
but are there parking requirements for those as well? Okay.
About all they could fit is an office where there's maybe 2 cars at a time.
So even with if this were to approve, I've spoke at some of those meetings, and there's 15 to 20 members in that. That would be too large of a group to meet there.
Right. So,
That's not what it's for. He's doing a branch from the Lions Club, because they do branches all the time, and there'd be 5 members in that one. And 2 of them are married, so there'd be.
Could be a chance that there wouldn't be 25 cars there.
No,
Okay.
you would never see more than 5 cars there.
and so some of the permitted use are retail stores, antique stores, galleries, restaurants and bars, but that is simply too small of a property. A bakery, a bank, clothing retail, barber and beauty shop, tailor, gun shop, photo shop, fix-it shop, repair shop, dancing, but it's too small for a dance studio.
And all of those have parking regulations assigned to them.
Yes, and private clubs. And so down here, you'll see that they have to meet all of these regulations, and parking is part of that. So just because you're zoned commercially doesn't mean that your property is appropriate for any commercial use.
Well, that's good to know.
Comment.
Go
Down,
ahead.
down the road, let's suppose that which we don't approve, the city council does, but let's suppose the city council were to approve this, and just right off the bat, they start having a lot of problems with parking as far as numbers. 5 or 6 today, and 7 or 8, and then the other members of the Lions Club. I've been to many of their activities too, so I understand the concern. But having said that, if there's a way that it could be monitored, and I don't know if there is, other than the neighbors, but is there a way that could be revisited?
Yes. And so any business that we could look at when they get their business license, so a private club is allowed, and so we could tell them you have this number of parking spaces, that's all you have.
How often do applicants have to renew a business license?
Once per year.
So then at the renewal of the business license, you would be able to reevaluate potential problems with parking?
That would be harder. It would be better to do it on the front end.
Okay,
And
so
say
the-
you are limited to this private club, you can only have this amount.
And that would happen with the permitting?
Yes, through my office when they do their business
But
license.
permitting is not renewed, it's just issued once?
Yes. And so if the use changed, so say he decided not to have it as a private club anymore and sold it, and they wanted to have a barber shop, then that use would have its X amount of parking spaces. It's too small to use for many commercial uses.
I feel like it's too small for private club, but not for office space.
Yes.
I feel like for office space, if you had a business where you just had, clients that came different times throughout the day, or an office that you were maybe just sharing with a partner, like you said, maybe only
2 or 3.
2 or 3 parking spaces, I feel like office space would work if there was access. The requirement was that the access would be on 8th Avenue, ingress and egress on 8th Avenue. 8th Street, thank you. That's a big, no, that's a big difference. So yes, we don't wanna. We could move the
Is-
no,
is-
8th Street.
I'm married to an attorney, sorry.
Is there,
Objection.
is this an all or nothing on both parcels, or are we able to give different recommendations per parcel?
You may give different recommendations per parcel, and I will ask the applicant's representative. I believe it's the one that is on the side that you're not sure of that he really wanted to change.
And they wanna change it to both office space and private club?
That would be a question, yes.
Both is what they really want? Yeah,
Valley Rotary, there's only 4 members of that as well.
I'm sorry, could you come up,
To the-
Mr. Stewart, could you come up to the microphone? I didn't hear that, I'm sorry.
The Gila Valley Rotary is 4 members at the most, too. There's 2 Rotaries in Safford. There's Safford Rotary and Gila Valley Rotary.
Yeah, I mean, is it a requirement that you have this so you can like put the address on your application for your club?
I believe so.
Hmm.
And there's a old shed behind all that if it's approved, they plan on tearing that out and getting rid of it as well.
Would that generate more parking?
Yeah.
Do you guys have any questions?
Do we have other audience members? that wanna
Anything you
speak?
wanna add? Either, no,
Me?
either of you? You're s-
I can add 'em. He and I had those 2 on our soccer team when I was 7 years old.
Are you recusing yourself too?
What's that?
No, he's not recusing
No,
himself.
okay, I'm all, where are we going with this? Okay,
Do we have other
Just
members?
yep.
Do those 2 other people wanna talk to?
I think you
they were only
didn't want to
6-years-old.
comment,
Did-
Beg pardon?
did you wanna comment?
No, I'm just saying, only in Safford.
Right.
Father-in-law, the coach.
Go ahead.
Just, with the, couple of things. One, is there a way we could, after you look at it, give a recommendation from us on the number of vehicles that could be parked there? And is that appropriate, for one question? And then the second thing is there, in the, if necessary, is there parking across the street? And I know 8th Street is, 8th Street is very busy. And, so so I don't know how that would be crossing the street. But just in the back of my mind, it seems like there may be a little, space over on the south side, between the street and, the propane place. But, having said that, I just wondered if we could make some recommendation or something like that so that it didn't exceed the numbers that we had, because, I've over the years, been involved, with students from my school, been involved with Rotary and the Lions Club, and then where I was down at Fort Thomas, when the Lions Club would have their activities at that park, man, there was a ton of people there. They parked all over Fort Thomas. I mean, that's how many people would be there. And so that would be a concern, but that doesn't sound like they want to have their activities there. It's just going to be the office.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yeah, there'll be no activities
Okay,
there.
so that's all I've got. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, like I said, the parcel that's already been used for commercial, which is the 032B, to me, that really makes sense. It's already been used since 1970. 032A, I'm okay with the access of the business offices, but not necessarily private club, because I think it just opens it up. So can we make a recommendation because they put the permit in for a private club?
What you will do is make a recommendation for the zoning. Then they could, if they have enough property for any of those uses in C1, they could apply for those.
Okay.
But they
So-
would have to meet the size for their parking for what they're wanting to do.
So we could make a recommendation on zoning, and we could encourage city council to take a very close look at parking requirements.
Yes, and I can have that ready for them also.
And parking requirements would determine the use.
Yes, I can have a list of what parking requirements would be for certain uses and have that prepared for the council.
Does anybody have a motion?
I agree with you. I don't have a problem with B at all. B makes sense to go to C1. I was surprised to find out that it wasn't already commercial.
I think that parcel 032A also makes sense, but not for everything that
Right.
is in there. Only because 032A, you've got the buffer of 12th Avenue, and then everything on in that section that is west of 12th Avenue is already commercial. There isn't anything residential over there.
In that block.
I mean, you kind of have to transition,
Right.
but I don't feel like it's appropriate for all uses in that zone. That's what concerns me, kind of.
Yeah, I have the same concerns as the neighbors have, really. I mean, we
And
don't want, I mean, I feel like maybe that there's a needed place for what the applicant is wanting to do there, but again, if the zoning is changed to C1, as long as the parking requirements are met, it could be anything.
Yes,
And if they tore down the shed behind and gave more parking, then there would be more parking to fit anything in there, which I get as an idea, but in the applicant's idea for that area, I just don't know.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time wording the motion.
I'm okay with it if the access for the property is off of 8th Street. And then the council assures, does make sure that there's adequate parking for the use, which means it might not get approved for private club.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Parking spaces for public assembly for every building or part hereafter erected. Churches have to have one parking space for every 5 people for which seating is provided. Theater, so there's quite lengthy formulas. Parking for office buildings has to be 1 space for each 250 square feet of floor area. So any use, restaurant has to be 1 parking space for each 75 square feet of floor area. Any other commercial building has to have 1 parking space for each 200 square feet of floor area.
Is private club in there?
Not specifically, but if it's not listed, then I determine it by like uses, and so it would be like a church, a public assembly. if it was the private club.
And that was one for every,
Yes, one for every 5 persons for which seating is provided in the main auditorium is for a church.
So in your opinion, Director Embeck, this property, parcel number 032A, would meet the parking requirements for at least one of those uses, you believe?
Yes, for an office, it was 1 parking space for each 250 square feet on the ground level, and 1 for each 300 square feet other than ground level, but there's only 1 level. So they would have to have 1 parking space for each 250 square feet of floor area. So you could never have a nightclub there because they have to have 1 parking space for each 50 square feet of floor area. So you would never have a use like that. It simply wouldn't fit.
Chairman,
Go ahead.
they used that business to rewind motors that are brought in. There's very little parking needed, except to offload and unload. And, there's a few parking spaces in the front that have always handled it.
You're talking about 32B?
Talking about the business.
Yeah, the existing business?
So they could share parking.
Yeah,
Okay.
their business
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
require very little parking.
Yeah.
And it hasn't affected really anybody since they built it that I know of. And they don't, as an industrial, well, I wouldn't say it's industrial, but for what they do, they don't need much parking.
Right. And it looks like in our presentation, staff is recommending the rezone, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And so they could,
So-
what you're saying is they could share that parking, and the owner owns both places, he would have the ability to do that. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Well,
So-
the parking, generally that little space in the front usually handles whatever they've got. Now, I don't know about what,
You just go drop something off and leave,
Yeah,
and go
yeah.
back and pick it up.
come back and pick it up.
So parking will be reviewed and addressed with the permit.
Yes.
And zoning, we could, if we make a recommendation to approve the applicant's request, I think that we should, encourage that there be a requirement for ingress and egress to be off of 8th Street. Just to try to reduce any traffic off of 12th Avenue. And parking will be addressed with the permit.
Yes, ma'am.
Does anyone have a motion or anything they want to add?
I feel a little bit like that parking is going to be an issue with even an office space there. So it may end up being a moot point, when they get to looking at the plans of it. But I understand the reasoning for wanting the egress and ingress off of 8. But is that something that if we recommend will hold any weight at the city council? I mean, it doesn't, it may or may not, I mean.
We just make a recommendation.
Yes.
And parking is gonna be addressed with the permit.
Yes.
Because parking is gonna be a different requirement depending on the use. So parking is gonna be addressed with the permit. we're just now, I think, really looking at, does this make sense to be a commercial property considering everything, I guess, around it?
And if the facility in the back that they're getting ready to tear down and would provide for some additional parking, that may encourage more people to come and be there, and so the people that have concerns may not really support that idea as well either. But I think if there was a way that we could, if we do, I definitely feel like we should approve the first one, and the other one with, if we do, that there's recommendations concerning the parking, a limit on the parking, and I don't
The
know how to
permit-
word that the right way.
It sounds to me like the permit is going to limit the parking. So when the permit request is submitted, then the parking will be evaluated based on the use that they're requesting. So
Yes, ma'am.
I think permit, process addresses that
Yes.
already.
Yes, and it's very specific, and I can make sure, because I'm the one that reviews those, I can make sure to discuss it with the owner and let him know the concerns with the council, and that it's very limited in what it can actually be used as. And the spaces have measurements that they have to be, so he's very limited on what he can actually use the property for commercially. And if it's a 90-degree parking spot where you pull in straight, it has to be 18 feet long.
Okay, I'll ask one more time, do we have a motion? If we do not, I'll ask for permission to make one. I've been advised it's best if I don't, but can I make a motion if we don't have one?
You may, it's best if you don't.
Yeah, so do we have a motion?
I think you're more articulate with what you wanna do, so.
I make a motion, we recommend a positive, recommendation to the city council.
To-
I recommend that we move the city, a positive recommendation to send the city council for the rezoning.
So do I hear, is a recommendation to approve the request
Or to approve the request.
to rezone from commercial, conventional manufactured housing to commercial one? Okay, so Moser has made a recommendation, a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
With the confidence that the parking issue will be straightened out in the permitting, I will second.
Okay, we have a motion to recommend an approval. We have a second. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Okay, Figueroa, you're an
Yes,
aye?
aye.
Okay, motion is passed and approved.
One abstention.
I think all who voted are in favor. All right, thank you. So we'll close agenda number 5, and we'll move on to item number 6, a report on tiny homes and related zoning.
Yes, Commissioner Ragland has brought this to me, and the commission as a body asked that I did a report. You have that in front of you. Madam Chair, may Joan collect the names of the people who were here, please?
Oh, could you please, give your names to
Did everybody sign
Jim
in?
Soto? Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, so this is brought forward. I've done a report. The City of Safford adopts 2015 International Residential Code. The State of Arizona has adopted 2009 International Residential Code. in all of the research that the senior building inspector, Hyman Holguin, and I have done is summed up in this article I found online, and it even goes through each section of code, stating that as long as your structure meets this code with those requirements and the setbacks and the zoning, they would be fine to build a tiny home. What people need to be aware of is it would be more of like a studio apartment, because you'll see on page 1 that habitable rooms have to have a floor area of not less than 70 square feet. So it would have to be open more like a studio apartment. Just the bathroom would essentially have a door. And so in our opinion, these are already allowed by our residential code. They just have to meet these studio apartment type standards. And I would like to work with the commission to amend the code to allow accessory dwelling units on residentially zoned lots in the city. They're not specifically called out, and they're not allowed in any area, but they exist everywhere. So I think that that's one section of the code that we need to look at.
To allow them where, you said?
In residentially zoned areas.
The tiny houses?
Accessory dwelling units. So it could be a tiny house, it could be another,
And you're talking about just, that's the only unit on the parcel, or would this be an addition to
it would be
other
an
units?
addition. It would be an accessory.
Okay.
So you
okay.
could have your family live there, you could rent it, you could
I like that.
do that. And it's not in our code. It's very odd that it's not. The definition of accessory dwelling unit is in there, but then it's not allowed in any residential district. It's never called out.
I feel like it's really needed right now because, for 2 reasons. One, housing is so expensive that I think we are gonna find more adult children needing to stay close to family, that still wanna have their private space. And I think also, there's a need to take care of your, elderly parents.
Yes.
And have them close. I think one reason you're not seeing it is I feel there's always kind of been a fear of those being turned into rentals. And then having a lot of traffic from rentals, having transient residents. So I don't know if there's any way to protect it where it wouldn't be able to be used as a rental, but is that an option?
In my opinion, that's the best, most controlled renter because the property owner is right next door.
True.
So in my opinion, that rental situation is probably the quietest renter that you would have in the neighborhood because the property owner is on the property.
Yeah. I just think that is possibly why it hasn't been there. I know neighboring cities have had, that's the concerns that have been brought up when people have requested those types of units, but I do think there's a huge need for
Yes.
it.
And we could put a requirement in the code that if you're going to rent one, you must live in the other.
That'd be good.
That's not a
That way you don't have two.
That's not a
rentals.
bad option.
That's a good
Yeah.
idea.
I think that would address some of the concerns
Yeah,
with.
for have a
with
main
tra-
house renter and that would.
Yeah, so that way it's not just all rental.
Madam Chairman, comment? Thank you for you and your staff. I appreciate all the work that's been put in there. I see where we're under International Residential Code 2015. Do we, I don't want to compete with Thatcher, but I just want to be on the same playing field.
They're
So I
using
would be
the
interested in what we're doing and what they're doing and how they compare.
They're using the same code as we are.
Okay, good. Thank you.
That's good. Any other questions or comments or updates?
I do think that's something we're gonna be dealing with is
Yeah.
there is,
Yeah.
I've had some family members that just, you can't find a place
That's it. Yeah,
to move into, and it's like $2,000 for just a little small place.
Where'd you find that? Gee.
I mean, that's,
Yeah, it's crazy.
yeah, it is.
Yes, and
For young families trying to make it, and, golly.
Madam Chair, I
Yes.
think it also keeps the city from sprawling. It allows for some infill development on the large 10,000 square foot lots and maybe some income for somebody. So I think if the commission would like to, we can start moving to make that amendment.
I like that idea.
Yeah, I think it is needed,
Yeah.
and like you said, there's already some houses that have done that, so then maybe they could then be grandfathered in
Yes,
and be in compliance.
and historically, they were a coach house, or there's already, in the older parts of town, there's already quite a few of them.
There are, the historical district has quite a few.
Yes.
Do we need to, well, it's not on the agenda to be voted on, but I liked your idea of amending the code to allow the accessory dwellings. Can we do that now, or we're gonna have to wait till next meeting?
That I'll just bring forward as an ordinance, a
Okay.
code change. I just didn't know, it was more of a discussion item to see how the commission felt about that.
I like that direction.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
do too.
Yeah.
thank you.
So I'll bring that ordinance forward.
Awesome. Alrighty, if there are no other updates, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Alright, we have a motion to adjourn, all those in favor say
Monday
yes.
night.
Aye, gee, I get to vote.
You got to vote, Ed.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Still
you.
looking for a building inspector and a neighborhood officer?
Yes, we have some interviews set up.
Okay, buddy.